Hi, I'm John Byrne with Poets and Quants, back again at Indiana University's Kelley School of Business. We are here for our second live stream panel. I think it's going to be a really good one. We're going to discuss how Kelley makes a career transition successful. We have 3 second-year MBA students in the program. We have the legendary Eric Johnson, who is the guru here of career transitions as head of career services. And we have the director of the Marketing Academy at Kelley, Josh Gilden. So let me introduce our students first. To my immediate left, we have a real go-getter who did her internship this summer at Credit Suisse. You had worked in the budget office of New York City, and you're on your way to becoming an investment banker. That would be Ashley Emerald. So welcome.
Thank you.
And now you had worked at CPG in manufacturing and logistics. You did your internship at Google in marketing, a big switch. And your name is Prachi Kausal. So
right.
Welcome.
Thank you.
And then we have James Morris, who had worked for BP in oil and gas, and this summer he did an internship in consulting at Accenture. So welcome to you.
Thank you.
All right, Eric, I got to go to you first.
Okay.
What are the essential elements of a successful career transition?
I think there are really 2 that stand out above everything else. I think the first is the opportunity for applied experience or experiential learning, and the second is the ability to reflect with a coach. What I think Kelley does a nice job of from really the time you get started all the way through the first year academies, and then through the summer internship and even the second year academies is a constant opportunity to apply classroom learning to live interactions with companies, live projects with real implications. And then because students are set up with a coach from the time they start at Me Inc. all the way through their time, a dedicated career coach throughout their experience at Kelley, there's an opportunity for constant discussion and reflection about what's working, what's not, what am I enjoying, what am I not enjoying, and then how do I tell my story around this? Because a career switch isn't just starting from scratch. I think a lot of our students come to the table with an enormous amount of transferable skills, but don't always know how to articulate those in a relevant way to the companies that they want to go to. And so how you start with your story as you begin, how you help it evolve over time so that it's relevant and interesting is something that I think is almost essential to do with another person who's invested in your future. So experiential learning and coaching, I think, are 2 critical components for a career switch.
So Ashley, let's start with your story. Okay?
Sure.
So you ended up in New York City in a budget office. How did that happen to a geography major?
So I studied geography in undergrad. I actually graduated during the recession of 2009, so I immediately did my first master's in urban planning. So I was always interested in the city.
So that allowed you to make the transition into the government.
Correct.
Because when you were a geography major, what did you think you wanted to do?
I actually don't know. I think I just kind of probably travel, I think was initially, which all my undergrad professors don't need to hear. But no, I was just generally interested in the topic.
How did you come to decide that you needed an MBA?
After working for about 7 years for government, ultimately it's very large and bureaucratic, and trying to move within the city organization was a little more difficult. And I'd always been curious, hearing from friends who worked in financial services about the nature of the work that they did. And I was increasingly a reader of the Wall Street Journal and read about these large transactions and knew I wanted to make a transition to the private side of finance.
And you knew that coming to Kelley and getting your MBA would help you make that transition.
I did, yeah, especially the academies. So in my case, I did the Capital Markets Academy. So that prepared me in terms of what a financial services career would look like. So basically, as a first year, you're able to meet with a lot of alums who work in different financial service capacities. You travel during your academy week to New York and Chicago and visit different firms, and you get a lot of hands-on training, kind of like what Eric had mentioned in terms of we did stock pitch competitions, we did a case with Amazon trying to figure out if they should divest an asset. It was a lot of hands-on learning.
And how was your Credit Suisse internship?
Oh, it was awesome. I'm really excited and proud to be going back, and always happy to represent the firm.
So you walked away with a full-time offer?
I did, yeah.
Nice.
Yeah,
And
thank
you don't mind the hours, right?
I love the hours. I think I have to say that one thing I enjoyed was just the fact that you're always on. And for me, that's something that I love doing, just kind of always thinking about, again, in this case, transactions and how strategy comes into play with valuation. And that's something I knew I wanted to do, so I don't mind the hours at all.
And I'm assuming that when you walked into your internship at Credit Suisse in New York, you knew what you were walking into as a result of your academy experience, right?
Correct. The alumni.
So there were
gave
no
us a-
surprises.
No, not at all.
Okay. James, why don't we go to your story?
Sure.
So you were working in oil and gas at BP. What were you doing?
I was a FP&A analyst, so I did everything from budgeting to forecasting to valuation. I did supported some contract negotiations.
Now, wait a minute. FP&A. I think there are a lot of people who have no idea what
Yeah.
that means, and I don't know what it means.
Okay.
So what is it?
Yeah, so it's finance planning and analysis.
Okay.
So I did a lot of, like I said, forecasting, budgeting. So I was working on big assets that you see in the Gulf of Mexico that pump thousands of barrels of oil out of the ground at any given moment. And so our job was to forecast how much money they'd be making, how much money they'd be spending, and then anytime we'd expand, drill a new well or try to expand the asset, we would have to do the valuation to determine if it was a good investment or not.
And you were working in Houston?
That's correct.
Okay. And so when you came to Kelley, you knew you wanted to become a consultant. Is that right?
I thought that was the path that I wanted to follow. I wanted to explore other options in finance as well, but I was very passionate about the projects that I had at BP where I could own something, determine what the scope of the project was and implement it. And the quarterly processes weren't necessarily what I was passionate about. And so when I did a little bit of networking with our IU alumni, I realized that consulting was all about these short-term projects where you could determine a vague scope of work and go and action it and implement it. And so that's what I thought I wanted to do, and it ended up working out.
So how did Kelley help you get your consulting internship at Accenture?
That's a great question. So my experience was, I engaged in on-campus recruiting and off-campus recruiting. So on campus, some of the firms that come are EY, PwC, Deloitte. So through the academy, we're able to interact with them every Friday. They come in, they do a case with us, they talk about the day in the life. And so from getting to know those different firms, I was able to apply through the school's processes. And then for Accenture, I applied the teachings that we learn in Meet Inc. and at the beginning of the semester around networking. So I made some contacts in Houston, which is where I'm from. I wanted to go back to Houston, and was able to cultivate those into eventually receiving an offer from Accenture to go back to go for an internship.
Now, will you enter the consulting field when you graduate? Or what?
I'm definitely considering it. I have an offer to go back, just making sure that everything is exactly the way I want it to be. With I've got a family with a wife and 2 kids, so I just need to make sure my wife is fully on board. But that's where the project life is where I'm passionate about, and my summer with Accenture was fantastic, so no complaints there.
And you spent your summer at Google in Mountain View,
Yes, that's
California. What was that like?
It was an amazing experience, especially because it was my first time in California, and I'm a chemical engineer. I have no whatsoever relationship prior to Google with tech industry, so it was my first time in tech. The academy did a good job of exposing us to different industries. So for me, academy was more like exploring all the options that are out there, and I had a vague idea about tech industry, but with the internship, I could really explore the nitty-gritty of tech industry. And well, as they say, tech industry has a place for everyone, and that is so true. Even for a chemical engineer, I fit right in. I could use my previous skill sets in operations and use it to the Nest team that I worked with, and it was a fantastic experience because of that.
And of course, you were in Josh's academy.
That's right.
So Josh, explain a little bit more about how an academy actually works and how the different pieces of the academy fit together to help create a path for people.
Yeah, so when a student comes to Kelley in their first year, at the beginning of that first year, there's 6 first-year academies. And so they listen to us as we talk about the various academies. They're all functionally based, so marketing, finance, consulting, operations. And ultimately, it's the student choice. So the student decides which one of these do I want to enter in and explore this area. And then for that whole first year, we're working together. And I sort of describe the academy as sitting between what they're learning in the classroom and that job search. Prachi used the word exposure, so exposing students to different industries, different functions within the area that they've chosen, even different geographies comes into play. And I think a big part of the anxiety around switching careers is just that you're unfamiliar. You don't know what you don't know, and you've seen little bits and pieces and say, I think I'd like to try that. And it's in the academy where you get to try it out. It's experiential. So we do consulting projects with real companies. We visit companies. We travel for a week. In October this year, we're visiting 10 different companies in 4 cities in 5 days.
Which cities?
Minneapolis, Chicago, Milwaukee, and Indianapolis.
Wow.
So each academy is different in the approach and where they go. Ashley mentioned Chicago and New York in the Capital Markets Academy. So, we go to different places to see different things across, in our case, tech, industrial, healthcare. And, through this process, you start to see, I could see myself doing that job, or I could see myself here. And that exposure is just really important in this journey.
And we should point out to everyone that Josh, you're a professor here, but you've had over 20 years of actual experience with companies like GE and DuPont and Microsoft, I think, right?
Yeah.
Okay. So, Prachi, how did Me Inc. help you specifically kind of shape your expectations of the MBA program and help you make this transition that you're on your way to making into marketing and tech?
So like I mentioned, I didn't really know where I want to be, but I did know that I have to come out of operations, the 4 walls of factories. Me Inc. was a period of introspection for me. It really helped me understand who am I, what do I want, and how can I get it. Other than that, it was a great opportunity to understand the different personalities that were there in my Me Inc. group, and just getting to understand how have they carved their career, and picking up their skill set, picking up their learnings, and seeing how can I apply those skill sets to me to explore the path that I have taken up to. The other thing that Me Inc. really does well is on having these very innovative team building activities, and I use them back in Google as well. I took the life path back to Google, and I did that with my team.
What do you mean the life part? What's that?
I'll talk about it. It's like describing your life from the start till the time you're at Kelley. Through a chart, you're drawing out every milestone of your life on a piece of paper and talking about to the team. So it's like narrating your story to the class of 15 students and talking about that experience. That really helps in connecting with the team and also learning about the different journeys that people have had. And
so you actually visually map out your
Yes.
life journey,
Yeah.
and you have different stops along the way.
Yes, and for me that was probably one of the biggest life-changing moments, because I realized that the diversity is what is going to play an important role in my career through Kelley. I could pick up from and there are moments when you realize that your experience is not going the way you wanted, but then you realize that everyone's facing those kinds of issues, and then you bond really well. The Me Inc. coaches do a fantastic job about explaining you what needs to be done, how it needs to be done, and providing the right resources. So yeah, that was my experience with Me Inc.
Eric, how do you help people get internships? Because that's sort of like, after Me Inc. and you join an academy, then the first step toward changing your career is kind of that internship. So how do you facilitate that whole process?
Yeah, I actually might argue the first step starts
It's Me Inc.
with Me Inc. Yeah, I think.
And you were an architect with Me Inc., right?
Over time. Yeah, we've had 10 versions of Me Inc. I've done the last 9 of them. So I came in on year 2 and have carried it forward since then. What Prachi is describing, the life story in particular, is a central component of helping students understand what makes them relevant, what makes them interesting, and what makes them unique. And I think those three things are the only three things, but yet they're so important, right? The only three things you really have to demonstrate to an organization to convince them that you're the right candidate. Relevant means I can show you that I have the necessary skills to hit the ground running, not be a master, right? Because most companies think, hey, I can give you some additional training to make you exceptional here, but I need to know at least on day one you're going to understand like the basics of what we do and how you be coached, right? The second thing they need to demonstrate is that they're interesting. It's the whole airport test, right? Like if I'm stuck with you for 5 hours, how am I going to feel about that, right? But that matters, right? I mean, 80% of hiring managers have admitted they'll hire somebody they like over someone they know can do the job. You know, if
It's
they have
that
to
high,
choose,
Eric,
it's that
80%?
high, 80% of the time. So what makes you interesting is important, and then what makes you unique, right? So in Ashley's case, I mean, all these cases, Accenture, Google, these are really competitive internships, and thousands of people apply, and only a few will get
Right.
it. And so our students need to be able to answer the question like, why me out of all of this stack? So the life story is one really cool example of where somebody stands up and over 5 to 7 minutes they say, here's my story, and then they get feedback from the room about, wow, this really resonated with me, or wow, this is really cool, this makes you special. And the coaches and the people who facilitate the room will hear different things like, okay, I hear engineer, I understand ability to influence cross-functionally, I understand analytical abilities, I understand process orientation and process improvement, and I know that product management, product marketing, these kinds of skill jobs value those skills. So we start in Me Inc., and then as Josh highlights, what's cool about the way GCS works with the academies is that each one of my coaches is dedicated to an academy, and so they participate in the Academy Fridays. When available, they will travel on the academy trips. And then Josh and his corresponding coach, in this case would be Christina, they get to know the students from two different angles, and that way they can have a conversation where Josh can say, here's where I see certain skill sets stand out. Christina can say, here's where I see skill sets stand out. And they can begin to develop a nice view of the student in addition to how the student is choosing to self-reflect. So we spend the fall going through these academy experiences, going through these coaching experiences, building on what happens in Me Inc., and then we'll carry that into January when the internship recruiting takes place. And by then, the students should be ready to articulate what makes them relevant, interesting, and unique. Underlying all of that, of course, is a huge culture of practice, right? And practice interviewing, practice. But the nice thing about, I think the way that Kelley approaches it is, it's easy to just say, well, let's do a mock interview, right? And the better way to do it, though, is in Me Inc., we talk about, well, what are your skills? We talk about what makes you unique. Before we even introduce these as possible interview questions, so that when the interview question comes up, what's your greatest skill? What's your greatest weakness? They've already had an opportunity to develop an answer or practice it with people, reflect on it, improve it over time. So there's always this opportunity to improve your answers before you even begin the process of doing mock interviews. So I think that process allows our students to do extremely well. And we're on 100% with internships, and well over 95% who land full-time jobs for several years running now. So.
Now, how many interviews did you have before you got the one that you wanted for an internship?
Sure. In my case, it was actually kind of, slightly different in the sense that I did programs such as the Consortium for Graduate Management.
Yeah.
So I probably had about 10 or 15 interviews with different investment banks before I landed the Credit Suisse opportunity.
Okay, 10 or 15.
Yeah.
I had given 2 and I got both the offers, yeah. So just 2 interviews
just
and I
2?
got both, yeah. I just had to make a choice where Josh helped me make the choice.
Oh, Josh did a good job. James?
Yeah, I would say it's between 5 to 10 interviews, or 5 to 10 different companies, and then several interviews per company before I finally landed the job with Accenture.
Do you find you get better with each interview?
Practice makes
Yeah.
perfect.
Right.
Absolutely, 100%.
Yeah. So, it's like, how do you get to Carnegie Hall? Practice, practice, practice.
Yeah.
How do you get a job? Practice, practice your interview skills, among other things, right?
Exactly.
So, Ashley, what was the most important part of the first-year program to help you really get a good, fast start at Credit Suisse when you arrived in the summertime?
Sure. I mean, I think from the networking standpoint, that's hands down the most important aspect because, kind of to Eric's point, the idea of do people like you? Do people want to spend time with you? Because
Right.
at least financial services is very much an apprenticeship model.
Yep.
It's hard to walk into any bank and hit the ground running, so to speak, with the technical knowledge. It's firm specific, group specific. So being able to connect with all the different bankers at different levels was something I really had to master. And that tell me about yourself question, I mean, it seems so mundane and simple, but having that locked down, so even throughout my summer when I would meet different bankers, I think that definitely contributed to getting a full-time offer. So being able to understand people and being able to connect with them in different ways beyond just the technical skills.
And James, how about for you?
Yeah, I think, really knowing what makes you tick and what makes you an effective employee. I think once you understand that about yourself, you're able to walk in day one and make a difference.
And you got that out of Me Inc. then.
Absolutely. Yeah, that introspection just allows you to really know what you're passionate about, what you contribute, what you're able to contribute individually, and how your frame of mind kind of differs from others. That just allowed me to really understand myself. And then, even if there were things in my internship that I just didn't understand, I understood how I could tackle a problem and how I could approach certain situations, and then it was easy to figure out a solution.
Now, do all three of you work with coaches here?
Yes.
So talk to me a little bit about the coaching experience. Eric, maybe you can set it up and just explain how you hook up students with coaches and what that relationship looks like. And then let's talk a little bit about your personal experience with a coach.
So, again, all the coaches are aligned by academies. So once the students go into their different academies, which usually happens the end of the first week of classes, then their assigned GCS coach will reach out and typically schedule the first meeting. And that's the beginning of what will be a minimum of 5 meetings during the fall, usually an additional 2 to 3 in the spring. And there's always more if necessary. We don't cap the number of times that a student can email or go in and see their coach. Each one of our coaches is already a certified executive coach or is about to become a certified executive coach. So they really do come to the table with the mindset of, I'm here to help the student become the best version of themselves, not just give them advice about what they need to do or what has worked in the past. So that's how the relationship will start, and then it unfolds from there.
So Ashley, talk about your coaching experience.
Sure.
What was that like?
So, I mean, and Eric mentioned, we have GCS coaches. We also have peer coaches who I think also play a significant role. So those are second year, so some of my peers are doing that. Proud of you. And you basically work with someone in the class that's graduating and kind of get feedback from them. So I would say, in my case, the feedback aspect was probably the most important part in the sense Ben, who's my GCS career coach, would offer me feedback on mock interviews that I did. Because even though I technically had the internship before beginning my time at Kelley, it was still important to always stay on the ball with regards to how you respond to people offering you critical feedback. And my peer coach, similarly, I think that's probably like the hands down most important aspect of my MBA experience is being able to give and receive feedback. So hearing it from a peer is sometimes a little bit more palatable, but it challenged me a lot to grow and to kind of respond to different changes within the working environment over the course of the summer.
So here's what I find interesting. Most people think you come to business school, you're going to learn your accounting, your finance, your marketing, your operations, your strategy. And here you're telling me the most important thing is how you deal with feedback and make sure that it's a learning experience that actually is helpful to you, as opposed to being defensive about it.
Yeah.
Right, which is a big deal for people, frankly, right? Okay, Prashi, how about you?
So
How do you deal with your coach? How has the coach helped you?
Yeah, I think my coach helped me in realizing where I want to be in. So I remember halfway through the first year, I developed an interest in healthcare industry, and I walked up to her, and she helped me out understand a lot about that industry. What are the areas in the industry that I can possibly apply to and work for? So GCS coaches come in like 2 aspects. They also help you explore the possibilities and the options that are out there in the different industries, and then they also coach you in making yourself the best version of yourself when you apply for those jobs. For me, I had a series of mock interviews with Christina, and that really helped me. She mentioned about the feedback. The feedback was really valuable for me to navigate through the expectations of what those companies are looking for, prepare myself. My car stories, what we call them, is it's basically about talking about your experience in the right format to the recruiters and basically conveying the skill set that you have in the language that they understand. And that's where the coaching experience really matters.
Now, you mentioned that you initially were looking at healthcare, but you were at Google in marketing.
Yeah.
What happened?
Well, I got interested in healthcare. Again, I joined the healthcare academy. So we have a life science academy. And once I joined the academy, I realized it might not be the perfect place for me to be in. So that's the beauty of Kelley. It gives you so many opportunities to
Right.
try out and to test it out even before you venture into it. Now imagine a year from now, I graduate and I enter healthcare, and a year down the lane, I realize healthcare is not the industry I want to be in.
Right.
I will be in a state of panic. I would be in a state of frustration.
Sure.
It's good that much early on during my MBA experience, I'm able to understand where exactly would I fit in.
Yep.
So that exposure is really important. That diversity of exposure is something that I greatly value that Kelley has given me.
John, I think that experience that Prachi just shared, that's a success for us. And you might look at that on the face and say, well, she did the academy and it didn't work out. That's too bad. But that's why we do this, to expose students to these things earlier, so that they're not having these things happen in their first job and saying, what have I done? Why am I here? And sometimes it's easy to distill getting an MBA down to just getting a new job. And so we'll call that career switching, but it is so much more than that. And these 3 students have been working on themselves for the last 2 years. And so things like getting feedback, some students come in not really great at that, giving feedback, receiving feedback, but that could have much more to do with their success in a new career than just finding a city or a company or an industry. Those things are important, but it goes much deeper than that in the curriculum here at Kelley.
And I would say, what do you think, Josh? I think Prachi's story is probably more the norm than
Yeah.
the exception. I think one of the things that I've noticed is we like to say all of our students are running. They're either running from their last job or they're running towards their next job. And the reality is when Me Inc. starts 2 weeks before classes begin, regardless of what they think, what most of them learn is, I'm really just running from my last job. The one thing I know for certain is I don't want to do what I had just done before grad school.
Yeah.
And so the process that Josh, Prachi, we're all describing here is a series of small experiments to test, do I want healthcare? Do I want consulting? Do I not want consulting? I want financial services, but within financial services, what does that mean for me? And those small experiments give us answers of yes, I'm interested in that, or no, that's not for me. And both of those things are critically important. The path to go from running from to running towards it winds, it looks different for every student. But because they have a caring academy director, because they have a caring coach, because they get these opportunities to experiment, eventually they get to a place where they can say, that's what I'm running towards. And that's where the switch really begins to gain momentum. So I think this is, to me, I actually love it when a student walks in and says, I don't know what I want to do, but I really want to work with somebody hard to figure it out. I'm willing to try things. I'm willing to be coached. I'm willing to get feedback. Can you help? I'm like, yes, that's what we're built for.
Yep. James, what about your coaching experience so far?
So I just add on to what's been said. I agree with everything. I think for me, my coach, Suzanne, was really helpful to help me in moments of indecision. When I was trying to decide between 2 different paths, she was able to talk me through the pros and cons.
What 2 paths?
So I had 2 different offers from 2 different companies, kind of in the same area, but
In consulting.
in consulting. And so I just needed to decide which one made the most sense. Accenture had a lot of really compelling benefits, and the other company had some really compelling benefits. And I just needed to kind of hear her perspective and hear the questions that she was posing, and then hear my answers back to those questions. And then through that process, you begin to realize that, okay, well, the answer is becoming very clear, and I know which path I need to follow. So that's one of the benefits of a career counselor. They can just kind of help sense check your logic.
Now, in your case, is that more a trade-off on culture and fit, or was it something else?
There were a few different things. Culture and fit. I think the family lifestyle would have been a little bit different, and then there was some differences in the packages. So just needing to understand kind of how all those factors lined up. And for me, I really wanted to make sure that my family is a priority to me. So I wanted to make sure that I wasn't sacrificing that aspect of my life. And so with Accenture, I knew that there were some benefits that came along with the job that would really help me to have more of a balanced life at times. And so just speaking about that with my coach and hearing my answers, it really helped me to see that the decision was quite clear.
John, we have excellent teaching here at Kelley. The Me program is fantastic. The academies are great. These are all kind of group settings, but some of the absolute best experiences for me as a faculty member, as academy director, and I think what I'm hearing from the group here are the one-on-one discussions. And some of those discussions, sitting in my office, talking about where I want to go in my career, how I get there, the trade-offs when you have two good things to pick from. Those are some of the best moments for me with students when they sort of get there and realize, okay, I'm making some decisions here. I like the decisions I'm making.
Yeah.
This is exciting.
I mean, at the core of the career switch is reinvention, right? I mean, you're literally reinventing yourself. So, Eric, I wonder what kind of common hurdles are there that people experience in reinvention?
Sure. I think number one is imposter syndrome, right? Like, do I really deserve this? Can I really do this? And so I think part of what makes those one-on-ones so valuable is there's also an element of, I believe in you. Like this Kelley atmosphere has an appropriate level of also like cheerleading and I think the opportunities for the experiments and the case projects is also an opportunity to show yourself like, oh man, I can do this. Like
and this goes back a little bit to the first session where we talked about you essentially gain a personal board of directors for yourself, right?
Yes, absolutely.
And that's a support network that may reinforce certain behaviors and beliefs, and that's also a way to get over imposter syndrome and other issues that might be in the way.
Yes, I think absolutely. I mean, Ashley was talking about your second year peer coach, which typically comes from the Leadership Academy. Your academy director, and the academy director usually has some staff that are also involved in that. They play a critical role. The GCS coach, your academic advisor, your core faculty, your friends, all of them really come together to help you with that, right? To show you can do this. You're not perfect. Here's the feedback that helps you figure out what you need to improve on. Here's the opportunity to get better. Here's the feedback on how that's going. Here's your opportunity to practice. Here's your feedback on that. And then look at how much progress you've made. Right? And I think that if we can get through that so that the student gets to a place where they can begin to articulate, man, I really want to work for a consulting firm in the following industry in this part of the country. And I know I can do that well because of this, and this. Like once we're there, like you got it. Like we're there.
Yeah.
You are going to get this. This is now going to happen. That's the most exciting part too.
Another hurdle in addition to imposter syndrome, what would it be?
I do think that despite the fact that unemployment is low, competition is still really high.
Yes.
I think it's, especially when you're making a transition, you are dealing with a lot of people across the country. I mean, we're talking about Google, Accenture, Credit Suisse. I mean, Kelley sends people to some really, top tier organizations, and the competition for those is tough. I mean, these three are amazing students. They didn't all get yes on everything. And so how do I bounce back from rejection? How do I better position myself the next time I interview for something? And just, how do I continue to lean into a culture of practice so that I don't let my foot up off the gas until I have the full-time offer? The internship is great, but until you've signed that full-time offer, you're not done. And so I think that's real. I think we recognize that. I think we play in a very competitive field, and we've designed a program. And our students, we have students who engage in the process to get better, and that ultimately yields results. So imposter syndrome and competition, but I think we've shown we can handle both of those pretty well.
And that's a good point, because I think that when people think, oh, I'll go and get an MBA and I'll make my career transition, there's a lot of work that goes into this, right? I mean, a heck of a lot of work and a lot of introspection.
Yes. I mean, it's at least as much work as happens in the classroom. I can't say that one is more important than the other. I think that comes down to the individual, their values, and their own stakes. But I mean, if you don't go to an MBA program where you're spending as much time on the job search as you're spending in the classroom, you cannot reinvent yourself. And I think we've got a system that not only provides that opportunity, but encourages it. And I think both are important.
It's not just work, it's work and discomfort.
Ah,
I think
discomfort.
many of them can point to some experiences where they were uncomfortable. And, you know, some of that is being in front of employers and knowing I could have said that better, I could have represented myself better, and learning from it. Some of it's standing in front of a room and presenting to a group of people on a topic that you don't think you know enough about, you haven't done it in this way before. So I love the culture here at Kelley around discomfort because, you know, one approach is to just run from that and say, oh, that's uncomfortable, I'm not going to do that. Another approach at the other end of the spectrum is to just make it extremely uncomfortable and never support anyone as they work through that. And I think Kelley has a nice way of putting people in uncomfortable situations intentionally so they can grow, so they can explore themselves, so they can maybe change some of their perceptions about who they are and the strengths they have. And then, you know, how did it go? How can I do better? And you work up from there.
So Ashley, did you bomb any of your interviews?
Sure, yeah.
Did? Okay, then after you bomb an interview,
Yeah.
who do you go to at Kelley and say, oh man, I can't believe I said that? I mean, who do you go to confer with to help shape the story and help just get support?
Yeah.
Was it your coach in that instance?
It was my academy director, actually.
Oh, okay.
So Rebecca Cook at the time, who's now on the undergraduate side, she was a woman who was in finance, had worked as a managing director for different firms, really well versed in the industry. So being able to kind of turn to her and say, oh my gosh, to the imposter syndrome point is because, you know, I'm just not smart enough or not good enough or, you know, what could it be? And she would just remind me, just go and try again. It's a matter of odds in some cases, or maybe it wasn't the right place for you.
Right.
Yeah.
Or just a chemistry with one person.
Absolutely.
I mean, it can come down to that, let's face it. James, what have you most learned about yourself so far in the MBA program?
That's a very good question. You know, there's so many things that I've learned about myself, but I think the thing that I've realized is that I can really work hard to prioritize my time and do more than I ever thought I could. Especially this semester, my wife keeps saying, you said it was going to get easier after first year, and that has not proven to be the case, but I'm able to fit things into certain places, be creative with my time, and you know, really try to make the most of time. You know, there's only so much time you have here in your MBA program, and so being able to take full advantage of it and learn as much as you can while you have this 2 years to, like you said, reinvent yourself completely. It's a time that you will never get back, and so I think that would be it, being able to manage my time in ways I never thought I could.
Prachi, what about you? What have you learned most about yourself through this process so far?
I think prior to Kelley, I wasn't giving much importance on introspecting, and Kelley, Me Inc., the academies, everything has helped me in creating a checkpoint for self-awareness. So I have these monthly checkpoints where I just stop, think, what am I doing? If it's heading towards the direction I want it to be or not, do I need to redirect myself? Do I need to have those conversations with Josh or with Christina? I think that's something that has come with practice over the last 1 year, and that's given me the maximum value so far. So the self-awareness.
And Ashley, what have you learned?
Initially not great at receiving feedback,
Oh,
but
that,
getting
okay.
better. Yeah.
Okay, there you go.
Yeah.
I don't know. It seems to me that you've really learned that. You've got it nailed.
Oh, thank you. No, I mean, I really do think that the feedback also, the thing I really enjoy about it is it comes not just from, you know, professors or academy directors, but from peers. And I know that in industry, that's really the most important thing. If we're going to be working on teams and banking a lot, and if your teammates don't like you, or if they've offered you feedback that you haven't accepted, they're never going to want to work with you again. So really being able to integrate that and also be better at giving actually helpful feedback, because that,
Right.
you know, it's easy to tell someone, you know, I liked your shirt, but how is that helpful for them moving forward professionally?
Actually, John, I love what Ashley said here because you think of a career switch as being a transition in one point of time. I'm in my late 20s, my early 30s, and this is the one time in my career when I'm really going to make a big switch. And that's true for some people, But I think what we're really doing is modeling a way to make transitions throughout our careers. This is not the only time that they will make transitions in their careers. That didn't work out that way for me and not for Eric. And so learning these skills about introspection, how to get good feedback from peers and communicate well, it's modeling something that you can take and, in 5 years or 10 years, you may think, I'm ready for a change, and you'll have the skill set to do that again.
Yeah, that's a really good point, because what does the data show in terms of how many different jobs, how many different organizations a person will work with and through in a lifetime today? Is it 15, 20? What is it?
Yeah, I mean, the average,
Right.
depending on the study, is somewhere
Yeah.
between 10 and 15.
Right.
People stay at a company somewhere between 3 and 5 years. So, yeah, I think that's an excellent point. It's how does this process work? How does introspection play a role in that reinvention so you can do it repeatedly over the course of your career? So,
Because we've been talking mainly about your next transition right after the MBA. But in truth, you may have 5, 6 of these through your lifetime. And the skills that you're learning now, as you point out, are going to help you make those different transitions a lot easier than you otherwise would be able to, right?
yeah, I mean, in 8 to 10 years, I'm going to hire one of them back to come back and coach.
There you go.
I mean,
Exactly right.
Because that, having done it successfully a number of times, I mean, that's what
And a lot of your coaches
Yeah.
are
Kelley MBA
MBAs who
alums,
come back.
because they want to continue to help give back. Yeah.
Okay, so
I'll
let's
take Ashley in a heartbeat. All of you. She's great. Standing off.
Hey, wait a minute. She's making big money on Wall Street. Forget about it.
Good luck, Eric.
What advice do you have for someone who may be out there and they're applying to MBA programs and they do in fact want to make a career switch? Are there things that they should be thinking about now, even before they enter the program, that might help them get on the right track quicker? Josh?
Yeah, I think the culture of the program is really important. It's easy just to look at sort of a single ranking or something and say that this is the program for me. And so prospective students who are thinking about, do I want to take the time out to do this, should really take the time to visit programs, talk to current students.
I think
graduates of the program.
visiting the campus and experiencing it, going to a class, speaking to people like you and Eric and students is essential to the process. Because here's what you won't be able to tell from a ranking. Do people really care about me as a person?
Yeah.
How supportive will they be? Will they be there on a weekend? Can I call them and email them or text them and have them get back to me quickly? You can't tell that from a ranking. But you can get a sense of that if you visit a campus and you speak to the right people. And that to me is really essential to make the right choice. Okay? What advice would you have, Eric?
Well, I think the big one is to stop and ask yourself, like, why am I leaving this job? Because I think that there are a lot of really important insights. When I leave this position, what are going to be the things that I miss? What is the organization going to miss about me? And then what are the things I'm absolutely not going to miss and really don't ever want to do again? And what are maybe some things that the organization will be able to do better once I'm gone? So it's the questions get at strengths and weaknesses, but they're deeper than that because they also unveil values, and some of the interests. And I think that those answers can really help us begin that pivot, that reinvention, where the introspection kind of plays a role, and we can figure out what here is transferable, where do we have momentum, and what are the hurdles that we're trying to avoid next time around.
And that's true in James's case, right? Because you worked in oil and gas, but you didn't completely throw away that experience because in your Accenture internship, you ended up working in the same industry, but
That's
from
correct.
a different angle.
That's correct. Yeah, the advice that I received when I was entering the program from a mentor was, take your core competencies and strengths, add to them, and then kind of pivot to where you want your career to go. And so, in that case, I had an oil and gas background, I have a finance background, and so I took a lot of those things and applied it to my current job, and it helped a lot.
Right. So, and Ashley, you went from New York City budget to investment banking, that seems like a bigger stretch, but at the same time, you were involved there with numbers in a budget office. You're going to be involved with a lot of numbers in deal making. So you're leveraging part of your previous work experience as well. And Prachi, maybe you are as well to some extent, right?
I am. I just have one more point to add, especially
Yeah.
for international students.
Yes.
It might not be, we might not have the right resources to come and visit the campus and experience it, but what helped in my case to choose Kelley as the right school was reaching out to the Kelley students and the recent graduates. That really helped me, and I know like articles from Poets and Quants helped me reach out to the right set of people who were career switchers. So I think early on when you are trying to look into schools, research and network with the students from that school and try to get a sense of culture from those conversations. That's really important as well.
Great. Well, thank you all. I think this is really interesting and fascinating discussion. Hope everyone out there enjoyed it. We are going to go on to our third live stream in a row, and our third one is the what success looks like in terms of a really dramatic career switch. We'll have 3 alums from the Kelley MBA program who'll talk about their transitions next. So join us. This is John Byrne with Poets and Quants. Thanks for watching.